Welcome back to Inside Politics. Our guest today, Larry Woods, Democratic strategist, Bill Phillips, Republican strategist. We're talking about what takeaways we have from the election on Tuesday, the midterm elections, both here in Tennessee and across the nation. We talked a lot in the first block about Phil Bredesen in the Senate race. In the governor's race, Larry and Carl Dean never really seemed to be competitive. The closest he ever got in any of the polls was 9 points during the general election. Why could he never connect and make that race any closer?
I think Carl suffered from a lack of name recognition. Outside of Nashville and the suburbs, not enough people knew who Carl Dean was, not enough of them knew about his record of performance, etc. So he had to spend a lot of energy and time just on educating people about himself. And again, we're a Republican state. It's not that Carl Dean did something wrong, it's that he couldn't find enough room to move up in the face of Republican sentiment in the state. I think he emphasized the right issue on health care and rural hospitals, and I really don't understand why people in rural counties have had their hospitals closed. Seems to me 90% of them should have been voting for Carl Dean, but it didn't happen.
Well, Bill, isn't the reason that Bill Lee did so well is that he's the kind of candidate Republicans like these days? They like people who are outsiders. They like people who don't have necessarily any great amount of political experience. And
well, you know, I think on Tuesday, the Tennessee, well, probably Republicans had a split personality. They went for the nice guy for governor, the low-key outsider, and then they went for an insider who was strong in her rhetoric in the Senate race. So it's very interesting to me. But I think that was part of Carl's problem, was that Bill Lee is such a nice guy and he comes across sincere and people go, I like him.
Do you think he'll be the same kind of governor as Bill Haslam, or how will he be different?
Well, I think one difference is Governor Haslam came in, he had been an elected official, and even then he struggled with the adjustment to the state and dealing with the legislature. Bill Lee, it's going to really depend on what advice he's getting and who he's getting it from, because you can improve government, but you can't run it like a business.
Larry, on election night, Bill Lee said he was going to try to reach out even to those people who didn't vote for him, so they'd be proud of him to be governor. He also talked about having Democrats in his administration. On his transition team that was announced just recently, Butch Ely's on there, former aide to both a congressman and then later Mayor Bill Boner here in Nashville, and Mr. McWhorter, Clayton McWhorter's son, is also involved with this as well. Are those the kind of Democrats we're going to see on there, or is that what he meant when he was talking about that?
I think that's probably accurate, Pat. Those are the kind of Democrats we're going to see. And Butch and Stewart, they're both business entrepreneurs and have been for 20, 30 years. And I think those are probably the kind of people Bill Lee is going to look to. That's what he is. He's a successful business entrepreneur.
And Bill, both those people were in his campaign, so it's not like he went out and found a Democrat off the street and said, here, I want you to be in my administration.
And I'm impressed that that was 2 of his very first appointments were Democrats who think a lot like he does from the business standpoint. So I think that's a good start.
Larry, how different as a U.S. Senator will Marsha Blackburn be? She came in saying she was going to be a card-carrying conservative. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't apologizing for it. Tennessee's had a history, at least among its GOP senators, from being people who reach across the aisle, like Howard Baker, to some degree like Lamar Alexander and Bob Corker and Bill Frist. That's going to be different this time, isn't it?
It's going to be very different. I think Marsha Blackburn will vote for every dime of deficit financing to build the wall. I think she'll vote to cut out the guarantee on pre-existing conditions. I think she'll vote to cut out birth control coverage, all the things Trump wants. She's made a career out of being to the right of Trump, and she's going to keep that up and take every national television opportunity she can. I'd bet that in a few years down the road she'll be running for president if she has her way about it.
Are you ready to help her with that campaign, Bill? Are the Republicans ready to get behind her as a presidential candidate, really?
Well, you know, the Republicans are trying to find out who they are now. Mr. Trump has, in this election, solidified that it's the Trump party now. And so there's a lot of Republicans that are saying, well, maybe we need to rethink what we want to be doing.
And Larry, looking towards 2020, the Democrats don't quite know whose party they are. They've got so many different candidates running for president as you do when you're out of power. But sort of where do they go? I mean, I'm sure they won the Congress, but where do they go from there?
I've been talking to my friends in Iowa. My friends have heard from more than 30 different Democrats wanting to come to Iowa and campaign and shake hands. It's going to be like the Republicans when Trump won the Republican primaries. We're going to have 2 stages full of Democratic candidates, and that's not going to help us.
So the main card and the undercard are going to come back and smell like a boxing match.
I think so. No avoiding it.
So, Bill, what happens now? I mean, we're going to have a fight in Washington even when the old Congress is going back in, because they've still got spending bills to pass, and it looks like the president's going to insist on having his border wall funded. And I think the Republicans, and the Democrats aren't going to want to do it because they're not going to want to do it in January when they get in power in the House. But the Republicans might be skittish about doing that, although Trump pretty much mobilized the Republican Party. He is the Republican Party, so it's going to be a tough situation.
Well, I think President Trump, it really doesn't bother him too much who is in charge of one house or the other if he can ram things through. They've had a lot of, oh, we love you and we love you too, and that this past week. But come January with the new Congress, it's going to break open, and I don't think we're going to have anything but gridlock.
Let's take another break. We've got Bill Phillips, Republican strategist, with us. We've got Larry Woods, Democratic strategist. We're talking about the aftermath of the November 6th general election. Back to continue our conversation after you watch these messages.
Some hernia mesh products were rushed to market without adequate testing. If your hernia mesh caused pain, infection, or will require surgical removal or repair, you may qualify for financial compensation. Call Bart Durham Injury Law for a free evaluation.
We salute you.
In honor of Veterans Day.
Stop and thank a veteran when you see them. Ask them how they're doing.
You'll be inspired by one soldier's ironclad mission to keep moving forward.
Losing your legs, was it the greatest
It's
moment?
a gift. And the biggest thing that I learned, your power is actually in getting back up again.
And
I thought something's not right.
her husband paid the ultimate sacrifice. Now meet his living legacy.
It's almost like being with Chris again, like in a different way.
She's magnificent. Monday morning at 9 on News Channel 5.
I'm Joe Adams. I'm a pharmacist that knows the pain of losing their child to an opiate overdose. If you think it can't happen to your family, think again. To learn more, visit the National Association of Boards of Pharmacy at nabp.pharmacy.
We are back on Inside Politics today. Our guest is Larry Woods, Democratic strategist, and Bill Phillips, Republican strategist. We're talking about what happens next now after the wake of the November 6th general election here in Tennessee and across the country. Gentlemen, there'll be another Senate seat, Lamar Alexander's seat, that'll be up in 2020. Do you think, Bill, Senator Alexander's going to run again?
I suspect that he will. If his health is good, why not? You know, people keep telling me 80 is the new 60. They're trying to encourage me, I guess. But
well, that makes me feel better too. But well, Strom Thurmond was still in office at the age of 96.
That's right. Yeah.
Is this when I declare my candidacy to run against Lamar?
Well,
just kidding, Lamar.
Who's on the bench for the Democrats to come in?
Carl Dean.
Do they have anybody to?
Carl Dean.
You think Carl will come back?
He's now got statewide name recognition. He's a smart, capable, great mayor of the job and great Metro Director of Law. He's done great at everything he's ever done, and he's spent a year and a half here traveling the state. If I were Carl Dean, I'd take 2 weeks off and hit the road again.
If Senator Alexander does not run, maybe if he does, there's a lot of talk about the incoming new Congressman, Dr. Green, coming in and doing that as well. He decided he's going to get into it. Do you think, Mark Green, do you think he's going to be formidable, Larry? He would be tough. I think he might be tough for Carl Dean to take on.
Well, I think Green is probably the most right-wing conservative in federal office in Tennessee today, and therefore appeals to what? At least 45% of the vote right there, which means he's just got a few more votes he's got to pick up. Green would make a very powerful candidate for a Republican state.
Bill, if for some reason Lamar Alexander decides not to run, what's the possibility that Bill Haslam comes back from a very short retirement and gets in? He looked at running in for the Corker seat, but decided not to. Do you think he's still interested in going to Washington if the situation is right?
Well, my gut is that that's the person I would think of if Lamar is stepping down, that it'd be Bill Haslam, and I do think he's interested.
What are the relationships within his own party? I mean, and particularly in a primary situation. Yeah, I say against a guy like Dr. Mark Green. He was not a Trumpster. In fact, he asked Donald Trump to get off the ticket after there was the problems with the tape that came out during the campaign. Would he have a tough time in his own primary?
Well, it'll be interesting to watch that because, 4 years is a long time. So let's say 3 years from now, we don't know what the Republicans are going to be thinking about their inside.
I think we do. It's going to be Trump, and all Trump. Good and bad. Mostly bad, I think, of course.
Back on the state level in the General Assembly, the Democrats picked up 1 seat in the House.
Right.
1 is a lonely number, but I guess it's a start. How do you make that any better? Because the supermajorities are still huge for the Republicans in both parties.
I had his sign in my front yard for the last 3 months. Bob Freeman, great guy, but as you point out, it's an increase of 1. The Democrats are still not going to be a powerful force in the House or State Senate.
Bill, I think you talked about this before we took the last break. You think come January it's going to be warfare up there because the Democrats are going to start using their oversight abilities in the House because they'll control the committees.
We're going to have a scorecard to keep up with just the different investigations that are going to start up in January on the House side.
And the Mueller investigation, do you think that continues? You think the president's trying to get? You think, Larry, that might be a problem even before we get to January?
I think Trump will try to close it down right away, either budget and financially wise, or by firing him, or both. And therefore, it's going to be a firestorm come January when Nancy Pelosi takes control of the House of Representatives, regardless of when Trump does it. Pelosi's going to make sure that it's investigated. Oversight
is one thing. Taking impeachment off the back burner and putting it up on boil, is that coming next? Bill, do you think that's going to be part of that fight that's going to start in January, particularly in earnest?
Unfortunately, I think that we are going to see impeachment start. I don't know if it'll be January or if they'll give a little grace time to build their agenda for it, but it's coming.
We had all Republican government, one party controlling everything in Washington. Now we're going to divided government. Larry, is that going to be a recipe for something to get done, or just even more and perhaps worse gridlock?
I think Bill was right earlier. I think it's going to be gridlock. I think there are going to be a lot of headlines and a lot of fighting going on between the parties, but I think it's going to be gridlock in terms of any new laws. But Mr. Trump doesn't think he needs laws passed by Congress anyway, so it's not going to slow him down. He's going to keep announcing, I'm changing the tax law and I'm changing the immigration law, and just going to ignore that Congress doesn't back him up.
He continues to be the focus of just about all things political, whether it's in Washington or across the country in the last couple of years. So, Bill, he's kind of unlike any other president that I can remember in my lifetime.
Well, he thinks he's still running a private corporation as the CEO and chairman, and he can do what he wants to do. And eventually it will catch up. The courts are beginning to push back on some of his executive orders, and that's a healthy sign for the democracy.
Larry, the Democrats, I think, feel things are coming back their way for 2020, but with this oversight and other things they're going to have, is it likely they may overplay their hand in Washington?
Well, That's always a danger in Washington. Yeah. If you tell me who the Democratic nominee is going to be today, I think I can accurately predict whether they're going to win or not.
You may not know that till the spring of 2020 or later.
That's exactly right.
So it looks like we're going to have quite a bit of turmoil going on within the two parties. Do you think we'll recognize the two parties in 5 years?
I don't think any Republican 10 years ago would recognize the Republican Party in Washington today.
Well, and I'd say the same thing about the Democrat Party. It keeps moving and keeps moving to the left, and you're getting a lot of Democrats that are like a lot of Republicans saying, well, now what's going on?
Bill Phillips,
we may have a new friendship.
Bill Phillips, thank you for joining us. Larry Woods, thank you for joining us. Always interested in politics, and the elections may be over, but politics never ends. And thank you for joining us on Inside Politics. Hope you'll be back here again for a future show. If you can't get enough politics in the meantime, go to the News Channel 5 website. You'll find my Capitol View commentary there. There's new commentary posted every Friday afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll see you back here next time. Goodbye.